morning, everyone. And it is 7 a.m. on May the 24th, 2024. And this is another session of Daily Spiritual Medicine. It is good to be back. And we are going to talk on a little subject this morning of invocation. Um, you invoke things into your life. And before I get started on that, very quickly, if you're watching the video or if you're here live today, this morning, and you haven't done so, please hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything to do so. Just be a member with us. And also hit that like button if you like it and comment on it and share it with someone. And that certainly helps me to be able to have privileges on YouTube to take this gospel, take this message and understanding that we have further. So I appreciate you being here. Also, there's a little in the chat section, there is a little money sign, a dollar sign. And if you click on that, you can use your card or whatever you want to do, and you can donate just whatever you feel like. And I'm not a beggar, but occasionally I will mention it. And you can donate that on Super Thanks. And it also comes to me from YouTube, and it makes it a little easier to pay for these things each month. And helps out. So appreciate anything you can do there. And most of all, I just appreciate you coming and enjoying the revelation with us. So today I want to talk about invocation and kind of as a thought, invoking demonic growth, or you could say invoking spiritual growth also, and despair. So this is volume 21, and it's about how humanity takes nature of both divine and evil to produce the holistic understanding of creation, a creation that is made subject to vanity and weakness. So it's made that way so that you learn both sides, or you learn all things about yourself. And this is the age where that all things are submitted and subject unto the Father. So we're in the middle of an age where there is invocation, or an invoking, or bringing upon you, or bringing from out of you things that you bring on. Now, how do you bring it on? By the words you speak, by the actions you do. It brings these things on, and they grow within you. And it's like I've said many times, demons, people think that demons are eternal. They think that demons are spirits out here in the air somewhere, when the principalities and powers that we're dealing with in high places are the levels of consciousness that we are dealing with every day. And we deal with the darkness and the light. We deal with the known and the unknown. We deal with the good and the evil. We deal with the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. We deal with the book of life and the Lamb's book. We deal with all those things. So a wise man once said, vanity, excuse me, vanity, all is vanity. That was Solomon in Ecclesiastes. But then at the end of it, he makes the statement, after all is done, serve the Lord, serve the Spirit, and keep its statutes. He had learned through all of his learning that there was one thing that you could do to invoke divinity, to invoke growth spiritually, and that was to serve the Lord, serve that Spirit, listen to it, pay attention to it, and serve it in your life. And we invoke the conditions of humanity. We do invoke the conditions of humanity, which is heaven and hell. So There's a man by the name of Karl Marx. And if you don't know who Karl Marx was, he was the originator through his books and his works and his writings. Probably the best writing that he done was called the Communist Manifesto. And he wrote a poem called Invocation of One in Despair. Now, I'm going to show you how you invoke things into your life. Jesus Christ, when he spoke continually about the growth of Christ, of the growth of spirituality, the growth, all these things within you that could grow and you could understand and you could enjoy and you could move into higher levels of consciousness of joy and peace and kindness and goodness and faith and on and on and on, all these things and the gifts and the fivefold move in your life of leadership and all these things that you could invoke within yourself by dealing with yourself. You can also go just the opposite. And this is what Karl Marx did. Now, Jesus Christ, look at the goodness and the peace and the joy that he invoked upon himself. And by doing so, also invoked it upon his disciples, upon humanity, look at the goodness and the things that he brought to us. He brought invocation. Now, Karl Marx, who was the leader of communism, so to speak, through his writings and things, he wrote a poem that was called Invocation of One in Despair. So, and this is his poem. So a God has snatched from me all in the curse and the rack of destiny. All his worlds are gone beyond recall. Nothing but revenge is left to me. So he's writing, I'll give a little right at the end of it. He goes on myself, revenge I'll proudly wreak. On that being, that enthroned Lord, make my strength a patchwork of what's weak. Leave my better self without reward. So here he is. He's going on and on. And it has to do with revenge and anger upon himself and upon his God. I shall build my throne high overhead. Cold, tremendous shall its summit be, for its bulwark, superstitious dread, for its marshal, blackest agony. Who looks on it with a healthy eye shall turn back, struck deathly pale and dumb, clutched by blind and chilled mortality. May his happiness prepare its tomb. And the Almighty's lightning shall abound from that massive iron giant. That's what you are. You're made up of iron, ruling the world with a rod of iron. And the Almighty's lightning shall rebound from that massive iron giant. If he brings my walls and towers down, eternity shall raise them up defiant. I defy God. I defy the Spirit. I defy anything in me that has anything to do with the Spirit of the Lord. This is what this man is saying. This poem is a great influencer in two generations that are alive today. Karl Marx he brought an invocation and put it in writing and put it out there for humanity to read, to feel its influence, to let that demonic nature grow inside their tree. He did these things, and the poem is a great influencer in the generations X and Z, which are among us right now, the younger ones, the ones that are just starting to come up. It is a complete contrast of everything that is wise. bringing the opposite culture that is needed in humanity. Now you say, oh, yeah, Brother Parnell, that's the devil. No, you invoke higher frequencies, lower frequencies, higher vibrations, lower vibrations by the things that you say, the things that you do, the things that you write, the things that you act upon. You invoke this spirit of life that lives in you, or you invoke that demonic nature where that your human spirit, that being that's in you, things grow off of that. Demonic natures grow off of that. This is what you're reading right here. It's an invocation. And it is a complete contrast of everything that is wise, bringing the opposite culture that is needed in humanity. It expresses intense despair and a desire for revenge. The speaker has lost everything and blames God and himself for his peril. Duality. He blames something outside of him and he blames himself. And people have that in them all the time. He blames God for his peril and himself. It is he is the original communistic leader. Karl Marx wrote it. The vow is to create in the world a throne. The vow is to create in the world a throne of misery and pain through treacherous government over people. Take a look at what's going on right now. Take a look at all the things that are happening. Take a look at how that they are setting up a throne of misery and pain. And this is a contrast. This is a movement that brings the contrast or opens up or exposes the holistic nature of humanity that can either invoke heaven or invoke hell by the things that you do. It reeks of fascism, socialism, communism, capitalism, dictatorships, and man-made agendas that grow partiality, prejudice, racism, and genocide. Yes, it does. It causes all these things. Think of the communistic countries and the genocides that have taken place. Think of the capitalistic countries and the genocides that have taken place. Think of fascism. Think of Nazism. Think of all these things, and that's what Nazism really is fascism. Think of Mussolini. Think of Hitler. Think of Stalin, and then come over to the other side and take a look at capitalism and think of people like Roosevelt, and right on up the line, the ones that brought in all of these welfare conditions, and they got these people to where they're like on plantations. They can't do anything but live off the government. And that's what they want. That's what they're doing. They're bringing all these things about. It reeks of fascism, socialism, communism, capitalism, dictatorships, man-made agendas that grow partiality, prejudice, racism, and genocide. The Communist Manifesto was the most notable of his works, and he was full of anguish. He was full of despair and revenge towards the Spirit, towards God, towards Christ. And he viewed himself as no good. And he wanted to avenge everything that he had upon himself and upon the Spirit and bring forth a throne of misery and disdain. And look at the world today who is following after Karl Marx, following after their leadership, doing the things that they want to, that he wrote down and wanted to do. And you say, well, yeah, but that's all of the that's the communistic governments, Brother Parnell. No, it's not only the communistic governments. Men like Barack Obama enjoyed Karl Marx. Men right on down the line, they enjoyed Karl Marx right here, and they are what is bringing forth a lot of these things that are happening all across the United States right now, trying to leave a constitutional republic and a government that's ruled by decency and morality, and go into all of this socialism and fascism and everything else. So we see it happening. Now, I'm watching the American movement. I'm watching the Aquarian movement as we step further into its influences in the earth. These men of renown who wrote so much anger and they wrote so much hatred into their works are now being exposed for their follies and their ungodliness in their teachings. And that's what's going on. You're watching Generation X and Z, and I know there are excellent people in there, and I know they will overcome these things that we are facing right now, because the Spirit is bringing out the folly of this contrast and this holistic being, so we can deal with the iniquity of it and bring forth governments that are uh, beneficial and benevolent for the people and for us as individuals. And we're watching it happen symbolically. You take that whole side of government, and you take that whole side of leadership, and you throw that um, invocation of disdain and misery and despair, and you do all that, and then you come over and you had the Greeks, who symbolically, the Greek god Zeus is the strongest of all the mythological gods, and his greatest manifestation of power, where was it at? If you go read the Greek gods, and you read about all of them that they wrote, and we know they are imaginary things, but at the same time, out of man's imagination comes those real truths. And this god, this Zeus, was the strongest of all the mythological gods, and his greatest manifestation of power was in the houses of Aries and Pisces. These gods are the imaginations of philosophers and men who didn't understand that we are the greatest gods, and therefore mingled the war of heavens and earth, trying to bring and invoke into the human race gods and strengths of gods that the human race didn't have, which in a sense is true. They did invoke these things, but the real invocation, that was imaginary. But they were men who were invoking by their writings, by their actions, by their thinking, by their imagination, by their emotion, by all these things. They were bringing and invoking into the human race things that the human race already had, but begin to go into perverted conditions because of men's ideas and man-made agendas and everything else. These gods are the imagination of philosophers and men who didn't understand that we already were and are the greatest of gods. So they started mingling things in their imagination that they thought was beyond human strength. And when they did that, they brought war from heavens and earth in the mind and in the soul of man. And we war with it through duality, thinking of a God and man, thinking of a human and a divine, thinking of heaven and hell. We brought all this through invocation. Listen, don't invoke these demons and these spirits to begin to live on your tree. He is the God that brought enforcement. Speaking of Zeus, this God that the Greeks wrote about, he is the God that brought enforcement to all other gods and men. Also, he was the God of Olympian. You know what the God of Olympian is? Law enforcement and sports. Now, in the Aquarian age, it's supposed to come back to a level playing field. We are going to, in the Aquarian age, we are already recognizing the great things that are happening and how that human and the spirit, how that heaven and earth have kissed. They've become one. The twain have become one new man. And you see that this god Zeus, which was an imaginary god through the philosophers of the Greeks, also he was the god of Olympian law enforcement and sports. Zeus rides the horse Pegasus of Aquarius. So Zeus is riding Aquarius and riding Pegasus, which is the power and the horse of the constellation of Aquarius, the house of Aquarius. And when he enters Aquarius, just go back and take a look at the gods, the Greeks, the philosophers, and all those who wrote all these things. When Zeus, the most powerful of all gods over law enforcement and sports, Zeus enters Aquarius. He dismounts his horse, Pegasus, relinquishing his powers to take his place among men. This is exactly Jesus Christ, who had all the powers of heaven and earth. This is exactly you, who were in theophany and had all power of word and logic and knowledge, and you rode into Aquarius, or you rode into the earth, you came into the earth, you dismounted that whole genealogy of divinity, so to speak, to step down and bring your powers into the earth and walk among men. Human is the greatest God that there is today. The mightiest of the gods became human in Aquarius, and his power, manifestation, and rulership take a tumble and crumble before the gods and humans of the earth and of the universe. So he becomes a man of vanity and weakness, a creation subject to vanity and weakness, so he can feel the holistic power of strength and honor and integrity, and at the same time feel the holistic power of weakness and vanity and issues and problems. So he holds all that within himself. And the Greek philosophers wrote about all these things in an imaginary way, but it really is the truth in a true way if you understand. And they invoked a lot of issues into the human race by not understanding the great things that were to take place in Christ Jesus. The mightiest of gods became human in Aquarius, and his power, manifestation, and rulership take a tumble and crumble before the gods. Are you watching the great powers of law enforcement today? Take a look at it. Look at what they're doing. The great powers of law enforcement making the movement and crumbling for a season following this movement. And we see Zeus is dismounting Aquarius. Are you watching the tumble of the mighty sports arena that has the whole world captured? In all of the NFL and the MLB and the NBA and they're crumbling, they're falling apart. We're starting to recognize they are just human, just like everyone else. And it's happening. Zeus is dismounting in Aquarius. Zeus is turning over his power into the human race. The power that Zeus had in Aries and Pisces with the judgment, law, and the great arenas of sports are tainted. They're falling. They are going away. Wake up. The influences of Aquarius are upon us. It is happening all around us. The strongest of gods has become human. The strength is in humanity now. That's what's going on. The strength of Christ is humanity now. It's not some God floating around out there. It's not some Zeus or some Karl Marx. Don't invoke those things upon yourself. Think of Christ. Think of what is in you. Think of yourself as the God that you need to deal with, and the God that you need to enthrone, and the God that you need to understand fully, think of yourself as who you really are, a God of heaven and earth.